Sit back, relax, and enjoy the window seat.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the window seat. On today's episode, we are joined by Levaero Aviation Chief Pilot and Demonstration Pilot, Rob Fox. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I can see you're sitting in that middle office upstairs that I often occupy in Thunder Bay when I'm up there.
Yes, it's filled with many promotional items and right now a few boxes of extra toilet paper and things of that nature.
Well, that's all the important stuff, right? The promotional material maybe not as important these days, but nowhere to give it out. But so appreciate you joining us. On previous episodes, we've talked about the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on business aviation in Canada, and spoken about the maintenance side, about the aircraft sales side. We've spoke with Anthony from the CBAA about what has gone on with the organization and the challenges they're facing, and some of the work that they're doing with the government. But one aspect I thought would be really interesting was the pilot, the impact of pilots in during this pandemic. And look, no question on the airline side, there are thousands and thousands of airplanes that are parked. And many people without jobs right now, just no airplanes to fly, and what percentage of those airplanes are going to come back is a bit of a crystal ball at this point. I think the airlines have numbers that they've projected that X amount of percentage of their fleet is probably going to remain permanently parked. But you're in a bit of a different category. You fly corporate aircraft, PC-12s for the most part. And so I'm curious to get your take on that. In your career, you started as a float plane pilot, if I'm not mistaken, and as someone who's a newly minted float pilot, that interests me very much.
Yeah, well, I did start my career as a float plane pilot, and I feel for those guys right now. As you may or may not know, on the commercial side, the bulk of the flying is done for American fishermen, mostly, in the float industry, especially in Northwestern Ontario, in Canada.
Right.
Yeah. And with that border being shut down right now, that means the start of the season is really slow. There's a lot of those outfitters out there that are struggling right now with the lack of American tourists basically coming in for their season. So I think there's a lot of operators out there probably either not hiring pilots just yet or waiting to see when the border opens and they can really get going.
Yeah, with the limited to just essential traffic going to and from, or back and forth over the border, that makes it really challenging, and those quarantine restrictions as well. I mean, that would all but eliminate the, the recreational fishing trips, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like even if they were allowed to come in, the standard trip is usually from 4 days to a week. You're not going to find somebody who's going to go into a vacation setting for 2 weeks into an outpost or a lodge or something like that, because they have to isolate once they get here. So hopefully for them, and with everything in keeping, in step with what we should be doing and putting priorities first. But definitely the float industry is right now probably in limbo for the season.
Challenging for sure. And from floats, your career then went into the corporate world, and you flew for fractional provider, and then from there both medevac and for law enforcement, with Orange medevac and OPP, law enforcement as a civilian pilot. And we'll get to your current personal flying experiences, but what are those pilots dealing with now with Orange and OPP, especially in a time like this? Are they even busier than they were before?
I know the OPP, for example, are busier. They've actually leased an additional aircraft to help them supplement their flying, because the airlines aren't an option for a lot of their travel. So where they used to use one PC-12, I think now they're using two just to supplement all the additional requirements. So they're busy as ever. The Orange fixed wing pilots, from the last I spoke to them, of course, you can imagine they're busy. Medevacs are busy moving people all over the province. And I think they've kind of reprioritized how they dispatch certain calls and things like that. But, definitely their hangar is right next door to us, and they have not slowed down whatsoever. So I think those two sectors of aviation are still going all out.
Well, and the part that many people often forget is during this pandemic, everything else doesn't stop. We're still dealing with the other, critical health situations and emergencies that existed before this pandemic. This is just net new on top of that, additional work and additional things to worry about.
Yeah, and it just logistically it changes everything. Like it may seem like something simple for you to go to your grocery store and put on a non-surgical mask or something like that. But if you're a medevac pilot and you now have to be in close proximity in an aircraft, you can't just have a non-surgical mask. You need the proper PPE. You need your N95, perhaps, the gown and whatnot. Like I know from my past experience with certain patients, we had to do all that and then fly the aircraft on top of that, which is awkward and uncomfortable. So I feel for those guys and girls.
Different times, and it's all, it's not something anyone, well, other than I guess in the medevac environment where you said you've used those on occasion, but it's not something that anybody envisioned using in their everyday flying.
Exactly.
And you as part of the service that Levaero offers of picking up and dropping off aircraft that come into our maintenance department, that has you flying lately. And so if I'm not mistaken, you've flown during these pandemic times in the last couple of months. Is that right?
Yep, I've flown a few trips. Actually, right early on when North America was really starting to wake up to what was going on, I had 2 flights to the U.S. One bringing an aircraft to California, and then right back to back bringing an aircraft to Pennsylvania. And at the time, California was really starting to ramp up their protocols, and so it was stressful when you get back from being through LAX, like I was, one of the world's busiest airports, and get back, and then you start hearing all the things on the news, and it's like, well, okay. And I had been in the office for a few days, and then had to go self quarantine after that. And but yeah, it was that was in the beginning, and then after those first initial flights, I did have to repatriate a couple aircraft to Southern Ontario, which is not far for Thunder Bay. That's
sure.
an easy day. Usually on a normal times, I just catch a morning flight maybe down to Toronto and go to wherever the aircraft is and bring it back, which we did do, and I did do. But those travel arrangements got a little bit more particular, and okay, now once you're on the ground, how do you get from Toronto Pearson to XYZ? And then once going through the airports was going through Toronto Pearson Airport during this time was an experience that I'll never forget, because I have never got through security so fast. Everything was just, you're the only person there. Like honestly, when I think when I was boarding my to come back or go down, one or the other, 10 people on an airplane that holds 75. It's just, it's weird. But also the added protocols and things that are going on and whatnot. But there you go.
Oh, did the lights turn off? Is that what that was?
Yeah, it's a motion sensor. Apparently I'm not moving enough. So.
Well, just this is just an additional item. Levaero is very eco-friendly, and our lights are on timers. And so if the room thinks nobody is in there, it shuts off, and we save energy. And so maybe you need to be moving around a little bit more. Just to
yeah, exactly. I'll just start waving a little.
And so, what about being in the airplane? About the airline side? I mean, look, I can imagine. I have not flown commercially really since the pandemic became full blown and it affected travel. And so I have done an aircraft demo, which I'll come back to. But how about you being in the pilot seat? Flying in the skies right now. Is it different? Is it quiet?
Oh, yes, it's very quiet. In some regards, it's nice to be perfectly honest. Like flying empty skies is kind of a nice feeling. You get your IFR clearances, like snap. You don't have to wait for taxi. There's just less traffic all in all. So you pretty much have your way with the sky. Like you put in a request in with air traffic control, you're cleared. Go right ahead. And the very little traffic. Yeah, obviously in Northern Ontario, we have a huge flight college here. They're completely shut down. All the local airlines and charter operations have kind of scaled operations down. So you don't have training aircraft, you don't have those types of things to deal with. But yeah, it's a little bit eerie. Like, I'm sure every pilot has been on a radio frequency for a long time and then not heard anything. And, you click that mic and be like, Toronto, it's XYZ. And they're like, yeah, we're still here. Like, okay, just checking. I haven't heard anything from anybody for 15 minutes. So,
because usually when you don't hear something, you think that you might be on the wrong frequency, right?
Exactly. I'm like, oh, did I miss the frequency swap? Was I chatting with a passenger or a co-pilot and I missed something? But no, it's just that quiet out there. And I think there's still some traffic for sure. But from that regard, those were the biggest things that I know is just, everything was like wide open.
Yeah. I've seen a couple posts or more than a couple posts on social media of pilots in their 172s going to Pearson, which is something you generally don't see, and it's not usually permitted. And they're speaking to air traffic control and asking if they can do some touch and goes, at Pearson, because it's so dead there. And they, and I've seen them get cleared, and it's a VFR pilot's dream, right? To be able to take that photo or video of them buzzing the tower at Pearson, the busiest airport in Canada. And so it's certainly interesting times.
I wonder if they're as excited when they get the bill for the landing fees.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. By the way, this still works.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. And so watching the news and, we hear a lot about social distancing and physical distancing and staying 2 meters apart, or I've seen some very Canadian signs of stay 2 raccoons apart, stay 2 or 3 geese apart, very Canadian, or a hockey stick apart. What does that mean as a pilot? What does social distancing mean to you, to other pilots out there, and what types of mitigating precautions do pilots now need to think about that maybe you weren't thinking about before?
Well, I can't say in particular to individual companies' protocols. Like, I'm sure they've implemented different SOPs and things like that. But for sure, if it wasn't already top of mind, cockpit cleanliness is going to be a top priority for the flight crews in general. Because, those aircraft, people I'm sure they realize it's not the same pilot flying the same plane every day. They fly different aircraft all the time. So they're interchanging and they're touching controls and switches and doorknobs and, you name it, everything. So I'm assuming that would definitely become high protocol, was be just cleaning everything, making sure you're sanitary and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if 2 crew environments are, doing the masks in the cockpit, but for sure you can't social distance. You can't stay 2 raccoons apart in a PC-12. I'm sorry, right. You're about a raccoon paw apart. Well, I shouldn't say that, but about a foot maybe or 2, right?
But quite honestly, in any cockpit, not just the PC-12, really in any cockpit, you're not 6 feet apart from the other pilot. And so cleanliness is certainly an interesting aspect. And then is it just a matter of being more conscious of it before and after?
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think one thing people don't think about, you think of pilot, you think of the airplane or the helicopter and the actual flying part of it. But these people travel as part of their job. When they travel and they land and it's their rest time, they have to use a hotel, they have to use a taxi cab, they have to eat, they have to rest, they have to exercise, like these things that used to be easy peasy are now, nope, sorry, you got to go to your hotel room, sequester yourself, and and order in. And that's tough, like you just work. And sure, if you're on a quick changeover or a quick layover, that's all you're going to do anyways. You're going to grab a bite to eat, you're probably going to go rest. But it really, just knowing that you more or less have to stay in your hotel room or limit your interactions with people, that's tough, and especially if you have a longer layover, maybe 2-3 days. And, that would be tough. So I feel for those people. For sure, their lives are, shaken up in a big way.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point about the, it's not just the being in the airplane part, it's the ancillary aspects that come with being part of the industry. I mentioned earlier that I had done, we had done a demo flight in Western Canada to show an airplane to several prospective customers, and that was interesting in and of itself. Where usually you're right with the customer and shaking hands and being personable and friendly. We're in a huge FBO room, staying, never mind 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, and there's gloves, there's masks on, and which I appreciate it, but it makes it awkward to speak, and so it's just an extra challenge there. And getting onto the airplane, you have your mask on, and so it's very different. The cleanliness was certainly something that I noticed, of wiping the airplane down before, wiping the airplane down after, and not making any assumptions, that somebody else did that already. And it's something that Steve Davey mentioned that we do at Levaero, is assuming that every airplane that comes in for maintenance has the virus in it in some capacity. And so we wipe down that airplane as it comes in, and then we wipe down that airplane as it leaves. And that probably is part of the new reality to some degree. What do you see as in the pilot world being part of that, what people say the new norm or the new reality? Do you see any adjustments to general practices or lifestyle aspects of air crew?
Well, you know what, I think obviously, and I've even seen a few of the major airlines that I follow, Air Canada being one of them, coming out with new programs, protocols for cleanliness. And I'm sure that, they're advertising it and promoting it for the passenger, but I'm sure that will extend to the cockpit as well, because, and they have to be careful, like cleaning aircraft cockpit, anybody who's seen one, there's hundreds of switches in there and hundreds of little surfaces. So it's going to require some special protocol. I don't know what they're going to do as far as, would they ask their pilots to wear latex gloves when they're in the cockpit? I don't know. Maybe that's something that becomes normal. I think almost all of the outfits that I've worked for have always provided cleaning supplies and say, hey, they're here. There's alcohol swabs and things like that to wipe down the cockpit, but it was never mandatory. It was like, okay, it's here for you, but now it might become mandatory. Or maybe that becomes part of another crew member, maybe not a pilot, maybe a ground support worker or something like that, that's trained in specially cleaning cockpits. Who knows? It's a little bit early to tell, but I think for sure the cleanliness will be top priority if it wasn't before. And then also maybe monitoring the health of the flight crew. It's, we talked about people that are on the road. I say on the road, but they're in the air. But that can wear somebody down over time. You know what I mean? If you're going to different hotels or going through airports, you're more prone to pick up a cold or pick up something like that. So so maybe they change something. I'm not sure exactly what, but protocols for maybe getting the air crew a little bit more rest, or who knows? Yeah.
So you make an interesting point about the cleanliness. It's a topic that I discussed with Ray in our last episode. Whereas the corporate aircraft has always been seen as a business tool, as a time machine that allows you to travel at your schedule and the destinations you'd like, and do your travel more efficiently. It's now also becoming that health protection tool in addition to a time machine, where you get into your airline, whether it's 50 seats, 75 seats, or more, 300 seats, and you're surrounded by people, you have no idea what they've been doing on a regular basis to mitigate the risk that is out there today in the world. And the question that we're hearing from a lot of our customers is, I don't know if I trust those people, or the statement they're making is, I don't know if I trust those people. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know if they are. And the on the corporate aircraft it's a much more of a controlled environment, where the people that are going on to it, like you said, the flight crew that are there, and the protocols in place for cleanliness, et cetera, and cleaning. And then also from the passengers, who's coming on and off your airplane and where they've been previously and during meetings. Whereas now, it's a very real discussion that companies are having, which is interesting. And
No, I completely agree. Like we've up to this point, we've kind of been focusing a little bit on the airlines because obviously they seem to be getting hit really hard. But I agree with you. You know, for the corporation that maybe they used to have a corporate flight department and they moved away from that. Maybe they'll now look at it like you said. Okay, not only is it a time machine, it's getting our people where they need to be, but it's also exposing them to less things, less people. Well, it's exposing them to less people, and keeping their environment safe. And we'll see where it goes from here. But for sure, there's a big advantage to flying private or corporate when you're going to be exposing yourself to maybe 10 or 12 people versus 200.
Yeah, no question. I'll ask you a crystal ball question. When do you think we get back to normal traveling?
I don't think we'll really truly get back to normal until, and this is just my guess, my speculation, is that we have a vaccine and it's been in place for some time. I think there's a
proven that it works in the real world is what you mean.
Yes, exactly. Either that or, and I'm not a medical expert, but I forget the term, but basically the human population has built up their own immunity. But for sure, there's going to be people that say, you know what, we're young, we're healthy, we want to go travel, and we're okay with the risks. But there's going to be other people that are maybe in a vulnerable sector, or they don't really want or need to travel. And they're just going to say, hey, we're just going to sit this one out for a couple of years. And then we'll resume as normal. And, it's funny. I was thinking about this. You think about flying pre 9/11 and then think of it post 9/11. That was the last big event that I can think of that really shook up the travel industry in a huge way, like worldwide. And after 9/11, security became top of mind for everybody. It was all about security. Did you ever take off your shoes in an airport before 9/11?
Right.
No, but now you don't even think twice about it. And I think that the whole industry will adapt to this new reality that we're living in. And and it's going to be tough because airports are not built for people to stand 6 feet apart. They just don't have the capacity. So I think maybe once those protocols have been put into place, new protocols, which the airports and the airlines and even the corporate side will put into place, the FBOs and everything, and you'll start to see a few people trickle back, and then they'll when the vaccine comes, you'll see more people coming back. But I don't know when that would be. I'm thinking I'm going to ballpark say 2 to 3 years. That's kind of my guess.
And it's interesting, and your comment and your ballpark estimate is in line with what you hear in the airline world. A lot of experts out there will say that airlines are not going to get better probably for another 2 to 3 years, because it's not really just a matter of when are they able to go flying when things are open. It's when will people have the confidence to be around not only the 300 people on your flight, but the 3,000 people that you're passing in line. Like you said, they're not built to be socially distant environments. Whereas on the corporate side, the comments that we get are, listen, as soon as we're able, we got to go. Business needs to go on and business needs to continue. And yes, we are absolutely going to have precautions, mitigating precautions in place. Both on our aircraft and at the meeting sites and when we come back from our meetings. And we're going to be very safe from that aspect. But Zoom only goes so far. Teams meetings only go so far. Is we need to go and inspect sites. We need to go and meet in person and do deals. And so on the corporate side, I think those aircraft are ready to go and are raring to go. And I believe the charter world is going to see that first uptick of people that have the ability to make the decision to fly privately. I think the charter world is going to see a serious uptick in traffic, and then I think it's going to trickle up to aircraft ownership as well. So time will tell, but the airlines are certainly in for the long haul here, no question. But from a business standpoint, and corporate aircraft really use as business tools. Business needs to go on, and these will be tools that help them do that. So Rob, I've taken up a bunch of your time here, and I appreciate you joining me for a discussion. I prefer to have these talks in person or sitting next to you in a cockpit, but we'll have to wait a little bit for that, and we'll have to get you down here and do some float flying at some point when we're able to do that.
Yeah, no, I'd really enjoy that. And one thing I would like to mention too was back to your original question, was how is it flying in empty skies? There was a part of me that was a little bit sad because I did know that, there's lots of pilots out there that are without work right now, and
Sure.
they don't know where their future lies. And
Sure.
we've I've been in the career about 15 years, actually 17, I think. And there were some rough times, and then there were some really good times. And now it seems like we've hit another rough patch for the career pilot. And so I just like to, say hang in there for those people that are furloughed right now or waiting to see what lies next. So, yeah.
Yeah, you make a great point. It's certainly a challenging time for many people out there. And one of the reasons that we're trying to do these videos is really to get the word out about business aviation. And so people have more of an understanding of the benefits that it can bring to their company. And in turn, the industry brings a lot of employment. So no, you make a great point, Rob. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll chat with you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, good. Make sure those lights don't go off. Keep doing something over there.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching our first Window Seat mini-series discussing the impacts of COVID-19 on the business aviation sector. It has certainly been a unique few months for the industry, but we're proud of how the business aviation community has been responding throughout the pandemic and confident of the ever-increasing value that corporate aircraft are going to provide both business and leisure travelers. If you missed any of our episodes, you can click the box to browse them all. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss our next mini-series discussing the ins and outs of Pilatus aircraft. See you soon.